Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to the New Year, New Hobby Challenge. We are on day 2, and the design today is called Polar Kiss. This is what we're making. My name is Lynn Pugh, and I'm your host for this series of workshops. I am a Mandala designer and workshop facilitator, and I also run the Kaleidoscope Mandala Club. I've got over 10 years of experience in mandala making and a big passion for creativity and teaching others and sharing what I love. I make mandalas because they help me tune out the noise of the outside world and focus on quiet and repetition, and it just really soothes me and calms my brain. So every year I host the New Year, New Hobby Challenge where I get to share the process of making mandalas to introduce some new people to this art form, and I find it super addicting. I absolutely love it, and I hope you do too. So we're going to start today by doing a wee bit of practice, and then we're going to move on to our design. I'm going to show you a few things here. Before we begin that, you need to gather up your supplies. You need your 6x6 surface painted black. You're going to need acrylic paint, black for the background, white or any light color, blue, any blue is fine, and glitter if you want to add a little pizzazz. So those are the 3 colors that we're using. You need a simple set of dotting tools. If you don't have the same sizes that I have, use the next closest thing that you have available. Really, you can use a lot of different things for dotting. So if, for example, you don't have all the tools and you only have styluses, you can use things like the end of a pencil. You can use an eraser. I mentioned yesterday in my video that I started dotting with metric size drill bits and crochet hooks. So there's lots of different things you can use. If it's got a flat end on the end of the surface, you can dot with it. So if you need to, you can gather up some extra sizes and that might be helpful to you. So you're going to need a weld palette, anything with depth. I use these little fidget toys to put my paint in, but as you can see in the picture, you can just use a traditional little paint palette there to dip your paint tools in. You want a ruler or a straight edge if you want to find the center of your piece. And then chalk, a watercolor pencil, or something similar to transfer the pattern on the stencil. If you need the stencil, if this is your first time participating, it is in the group, and I also sent an email out with that yesterday as well. So you can print that off and use it. I'll show you how to get that on your surface when we get to that point. As we're dotting, just a few reminders here. When you dip, hold on one second, let me grab one of my dotting rods. All right, so when you are using your tool, these are called rods, the ones with the flat ends. When you dip that into the paint, you want that paint to come up over the edge. You want to have plenty of paint on the end of that tool. So you can see it makes a little bubble for me. You'll also notice my paint is not so thin that it falls right off. It kind of holds on there. That's what we want. That's the perfect consistency. Paint consistency is really, really important when you're dotting. You want it to be the consistency of a milkshake or melted ice cream. You want it to hold together basically and stay in that dot. You don't want it to be too loose, but you don't want it to be so thick that it makes Hershey Kisses either. So when you dip in your paint, you want it over the edge of your tool. We're going to hold the rods at 90 degrees when we make our dots. So go ahead and just practice a few dots. If you were with me yesterday, we talked about the kiss. So as you're dotting, you want to gently kiss the paint onto the surface. We're not stamping. We don't want to Hulk smash our tool on there. And the reason why we're not going to stamp is because here's the difference between a kiss and a stamp. You'll see the stamp, it kind of, well, it's hard to see because it's white, but there you go. You can see it just leaves a very uneven surface. It kind of creates a suction. It just makes a really weird dot. So we're not going to smush and stamp. We're going to gently kiss so it smushes out. You can see it kind of smush there, and then we lift. All right, so that's a few dots that we are going to practice. Yesterday, we talked about the types of tools. We have dotting rods, which are flat on the ends, and we have styluses, which have a little ball on the end. We hold these rods at 90 degrees, straight up and down. We hold these styluses like a pencil. And when you dip and dot with the stylus, these will make similar sized dots. Or you can also do something with the styluses called walking the dots, where you dip once and make many dots, and they will get progressively smaller. So I'm holding this like a pencil, and I'm tapping it right onto my surface. I'm not adjusting the pressure, but that stylus will slowly and gently run out of paint and create that tapered look. That is called walking the dots. So if you want to practice a few of those. You can use your styluses or really any tool to create something called a dot crown. And that's where we dip and dot multiple times in a pattern to create a crown on top of a dot. So for example, here, I call this a triple dot crown. If you add a crown, or if you walk the dots around a larger dot, it's then called a petal. So this element, once you combine these little pieces, becomes something called a petal. And so there are different types of designs you can use to make petals. Another element that we'll be playing with a little bit in another day is called swooping or swiping, and that's when we dip a stylus in paint and we pull it. And it creates these little curvy comma shapes. You can do them in a curve. You can do them straight. We'll play with this a little bit again in another day, but these are called swoops and swipes. The trick to these is don't adjust your pressure. You're going to use the stylus just like a pen or a pencil, and you're just going to pull it until it runs out of paint. But we'll play with those another time. The next thing I want to show you is called a teardrop and a pin. And so in order to make a teardrop, what you're going to need is a rod, and you're going to need a small stylus to pull that into shape. So for example, if we take a dot, let's see, I'll do it right here. Let's make a dot. And then I can come behind it and I can take my stylus and I can pull that like this. That's called a pin. It looks like, a little pin head. Or I can pull it into a pin, and then I can work that paint with the end of that little stylus into a teardrop shape. And so those are two more elements that we can use when we make designs. We can use the pin shape or the teardrop shape. And basically, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just using this as a little tool to just pull the paint that's already on there into that shape. Now, there may be times, let's see, I make my teardrop shape and I want to I make my dot and I want to pull that into a teardrop, and I start pulling this and I just don't have enough paint. Like, it's kind of dry. You can see it's getting kind of streaky because I don't have enough paint in there. I can redip my stylus into the paint and re-wet it and add a little more paint into that design if I need to. So you just dip in the paint and then put it back on your surface, and then you can finish what you're doing. So we're going to use those teardrop elements in our design today. Before I get started with that, while you are practicing some of those elements, I want to let you know about the giveaway today. So I've got two fun little paint packs. The first one is a set of 5 paints, 5 Deco Art paints in different colors. There's a black, a purple, a white, and a glittery color, and a blue. In this one, lots of different colors. And then for my second giveaway, my giveaway number 2, I've got 3 paint colors in this paint pack. I've got some glitter drops, and I've got a Lazy Susan, which is what I use to turn my surface. And it just makes it a little more fun and easier to do my design. So if you want to win, I will give those away to the first 2 people who go to my Facebook page, not the group, my Facebook page, Lynn, Pugh, Artiste, and comment on the post for the challenge today with the design that we made. So all you have to do is go there and comment. You can post a picture of what you made. You can say something about the event, whatever. But the first 2 people that comment on my page, on that post, I will send you the paint packs. So that is the 2 giveaways for today. So as of now, they are still open to the first 2 people who comment. But let's get into the good stuff and start our design today. So we want to transfer the stencil, or maybe you have your own stencil, but go ahead and paint your black background. And then what I did to transfer my stencil is I used a piece of chalk, and you just do a little scribble, scribble, scribble on the back with your chalk. You're going to flip it over and center it on your board. Mine's cut kind of funny, ignore that. And then you just go over it with a pen, and this is going to transfer that chalk on there. Now it transfers really light. What I like to do is just go back through and I'll make my lines a little darker so I can see what I've got going on. All right, so it should look something like this when you're done. I use the stencil as a guide. I don't expect it to be perfect, so that just helps me understand placement as we're working. This one is a little simpler, same idea. You can transfer it on there. It's just less lines. I included both. We're working with a multiple of 6, so either way is fine. So that's how you get your transfer transferred. Anytime you are watching live or following along the recording, you can pause this video. The great thing about YouTube is you can change the speed as well. So if you work slower than me, you can slow me down. If you work faster than me, you can speed me up, whatever you need to do. So just a reminder that you can do that. But let's go ahead and get started. And just a reminder, if you don't have the same sizes, just go up or down in size as needed based on what you have. I just make these patterns up, so they don't have to be exactly the same as mine to be beautiful. But I'll tell you what I'm using. We're going to start with our center dot. And for that, I'm going to use, oops, let me put my painting back up here. We're going to use 10 millimeters and white paint. Remember to hold it straight up and down and just give that a little kiss. As we're working tonight, remember that we are just trying something new. We're practicing, we're learning. So don't aim for perfect. That is unnecessary and it makes it more stressful. Next, I'm going to use my 4 millimeter tool and I'm going to use my blue. For this, we're going to make teardrops. We're going to do it on every other line. So I'm going to work one at a time. So just start with, it doesn't matter which one you start with, but pick a line. Make your 4 millimeter dot. Then you're going to take your stylus tool. You can dip in paint or you can just pull it from the paint on there. And we're just going to make a little teardrop shape by pulling that out. Now I want 6 of these. I've got 12 lines. Now if you used this stencil, just put one on every line, okay? If you used this stencil, you've got 12 lines. So you're going to skip. So it just depends on which one you used. I hope that makes sense. But we want 6 of these. So if you've got 12 lines, it's every other line. If you've got 6 lines, just do one on every line. That was our 4mm tool. We're going to create 6 teardrops. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 6mm tool, 6mm, and we're going to make some dots in the spaces in between. So I've got my teardrops here. We're going to create these dots in between right here. One thing I want you to notice in this design is these dots are not right up next to the middle. There's a little bit of space. So I'm going to nestle them in between the teardrop ends wherever they fit comfortably. So 6mm, I'm going to use white paint. So I'm going to find 2 teardrops and then nestle that circle right in there. So don't try to squash it in between the base of the teardrop. Give it a little room. Dip and dot each time. We're going to make 6 of those. Next, I'm going to take a stylus. Most styluses will have a large end and a small end, and so we just need 2 sizes for the design today. I'm going to use the large end. For me, that's 3mm, and I'm going to dip in white paint. And next to the tip of the teardrop, I'm going to place a dot. So find that teardrop shape. Go out to the end and place a little dot. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do these large teardrops. So notice what these are next to. So we've got the small teardrops here with the white dot. So I'm going to find that white dot. And then right next to that is a teardrop going outward. So I'm going to take my 8mm tool and white paint. I'm going to find that white dot, that larger white dot, and right next to it, I use my 8mm tool to make a dot. Then I get my smallest stylus, and I'm going to pull that into a large teardrop shape. Now sometimes we can make our teardrops longer. We can make them kind of short and stubby. It doesn't matter how you choose to make your teardrop. Just repeat that same way all the way around. So just to show you an example, like if I made the little pin really short, see how that teardrop is shorter? As long as you just make them the same, that's what we're going for. It doesn't matter if they're long teardrops or short teardrops, just make teardrops. So we're going to place one of these next to each of those 6 dots. So we end up with 6 of these. Next, we are going to practice walking the dots. If you don't have this ring on your picture, you can take your chalk and just gently kind of make a ring, or you can even just make a mark where the two, what we want to do is kind of have a guideline in between the two tips of these teardrops, because that's where we're going to start walking the dots. So visually, we want to kind of find that place. You don't necessarily have to mark it if you can visually find it, but if you want to mark it with your chalk, you can. But this is where we're going to start the next piece of the pattern, is in between these two shapes where they end. We're going to walk the dots. So I'm going to take a 3mm stylus, or your large stylus. I'm going to dip in white paint. We dip one time. I'm going to start at that line and I'm going to dip, dot, 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 dot. So I can fit 4 in there comfortably. If you can fit more than that, that's fine. But we're going to dip once and then walk the dots. And so I walk the dots, I dip again, walk the dots again. So you dip once, make that element, and then you dip and then make the next element. So I started on the outside line and I worked my way inward. For the next part of the design, I'm going to get my 4mm tool and I'm going to use blue paint. And on these rays right next to where we just walked the dots, on the outside, I'm going to dip and dot one blue dot. I'm also going to dip and dot a blue dot at the end of the teardrop. So we're going to end up with 12 of these. So we're going to work the way around our pattern, dip and dot, blue paint, 4mm all the way around. Next, in between these blue dots, next to this teardrop shape, we're going to make smaller teardrops that go inward, kind of the reverse. So what we're looking at is right here in the middle, this set of 3 teardrops. We have this one. Now we need to create these 2. And so I'm going to use a 6mm tool and my white paint. And I can do 2 dots at a time. I wouldn't do more than that because your paint will start to dry. But I want the end, the dot of my teardrop to start in between these blue dots. So go ahead and make dip and dot, and then dip and dots. So you've got 2 dots, and you'll see they're in between those blues. Take your small stylus and then just pull the teardrop inward. And we're going to repeat that all the way around, so we end up making 12 total teardrops. So find your 2 blue dots, dip and dot, dip and dot. Then with your little stylus, make your teardrop. All right, next we need an 8mm tool, an 8mm rod. We're going to use white paint. We're going to find the ray that has where we walked the dots. So find those teeny tiny dots. Right next to the blue dot, we are going to dip and dot a white 8mm dot. So this is going to be every other. So I'm going to dip and dot. I don't want the one next to my teardrop. I'm going to find the next one where we walk the dots and then dip and dot. Skip your teardrop, find the walk the dots, dip and dot. Skip your teardrop, dip and dot. So we're going to end up with 6 dots. All right, what we're going to do next is we are going to start making these petals. So I have a petal you'll see on every one of those 6. We're going to start with that 3mm dot. I'm going to get my stylus. So my large stylus is 3mm. Using white paint, I'm going to dip and dot the center dot right next to each one of these. So dip and dot all the way around. 3mm with white. I just added these little tiny white dots right in the middle. Then I'm going to switch to the small end of my stylus, which is about 1.5mm. I'm going to dip in the white paint, and then I'm going to walk the dots around. So remember I said you can walk in a straight line or you can walk in a curve. So we're going to dip once, and then I'm going to go on the right side and dot, 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 dot. So I can fit 7 comfortably, so I'm going to aim for 7 on each side. So I did 7 on the right. I'm going to dip once, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, depending on how you space it, you might only be able to fit 6. You might be able to fit 8. That's fine, as long as you do it the same all the way around. So I'm just going to continue that. Dip once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I dip again and I do the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to create these petals all the way around. All right, we're going to add another layer to that petal, and this one is a little chunkier. And so we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to go up in size. So I used a 3mm stylus for this. Next, I'm going to use a 4mm rod. So I'm going to go up in size for that center dot, 4mm, white paint, and I'm going to do those center dots again. And then we're going to walk the dots on each side again, except instead of using the small end of my stylus, I'm going to use the large 3mm end. And so it's going to be, like I said, chunkier. So again, we're going to dip once, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so that makes a larger, chunkier part of the petal. So we're going to do that all the way around. So dip once and then walk, and then dip again and walk on the other side. All right, next, I'm going to get a 10mm tool and white paint again. I'm using lots of white paint. Now, in between these petals, we've got these little blue dots with nothing next to it. That's where we're going to work, okay, in this space here. I'm going to get my 10mm tool, and we're going to place a white dot right in between. So we're going to end up with 6 white dots in between those petals, right next to that little blue dot. Once you have these 6 large dots, you'll see next to that, you'll recognize this element from earlier. I called this a triple dot crown. I made that by using my stylus. You dip and dot, and then dip and dot in the middle and make a little triangle. So I'm going to use my white paint, dip and dot once, dip and dot twice, and dip and dot that third time. And we're going to do that for each of those 10mm dots that we just made. 3mm stylus, white paint. We're making triple dot crowns. Now this is it for the base of the design. So we did all of our base dots. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you have about a 5-minute break so your piece can dry a little bit. Like I said yesterday, you can kind of fan something over it. If you don't have a dryer, you can fan it up and down. Just don't drop it. But I'm going to go ahead and put us on a break for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to show you what I did for top dots. right, everyone, I'm going to move on to top dots. I love to tell my students top dots you can go totally rogue with top dots. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to walk you through what I did. If you want to follow my top dots, you can absolutely do that. For the center dot, I used a 6mm tool and my glitter sparkle. I know some of you in the group said your glitter did not work real well. If you don't want to use glitter, you don't have to. You can use a different color of paint. You can use your blue. Glitter can sometimes be difficult. So I did 6mm in glitter in the middle. In this next ring here where I've got these white dots, I used my stylus, my large stylus, 3mm, and glitter. And I placed a glitter dot on each of these 6 white dots. You'll notice as I'm working with this glitter, I'm kind of double dotting or adding just a little more paint to some of these dots because glitter is very transparent. So I don't do that with the normal paint, but sometimes you will see me do that with the glitter. Now, my next step, I'm going to use a 4mm tool. I'm going to work on the petals that have where we walked the dots around it, not the petals with the triple dot crown. So right now I've just got the petals with the walking the dots. I'm going to use my 4mm tool in blue, and I'm going to place a top dot right in the middle of those. Remember to dip and dot each time, 90 degrees. And the last step, I'm going to use my 4mm tool and my glitter, and I'm going to place a dot on the ones with the triple dot crown. And there you have it, friends. This is the Polar Kiss design. Don't forget to sneak onto my Facebook page and make a comment. The first 2 comments will get that little paint pack in the mail. And please, please, please share your piece in the New Year, New Hobby Facebook group so everybody can see please don't be shy about sharing. We are all starting from the beginning. Nobody is a dot art master. Even I feel like I've been doing this for 10 years. I've got a lot to learn. So absolutely, we all start from different places. Our work always feels different. The idea here is to practice, to learn something new, and to get progressively better over the next couple of days. So please share what you've done in the group. I can't wait to see it. Tomorrow, we will have a live video, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll have some more giveaways and good stuff. And I will see you then. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for joining.